Hello, I just watched Soul, which is the new Disney Pixar movie that came out over the holiday, and I'm going to talk about it now. I don't know if I should really call this a review, because for one thing, I'm definitely not going to score or really rate the movie in any way. I'm also not going to get into a ton of specific analysis or anything like that. I'm just going to tell you a bit about my experience of watching the movie, and maybe most importantly, how it compares for me to other Pixar work and especially other contemporary animated feature films. So you already know about this movie. I will say that, like a lot of people, as soon as I heard about the initial premise of Soul, I had a lot of assumptions about it. I definitely drew immediate comparisons in my brain to Inside Out. In that vein, is Soul just another Inside Out? Kind of. I do think that's an overly simplistic comparison and denies a lot of the work being done here, but in terms of story structure and formula and even just like the simplicity of the messaging, they're very similar. One of the easiest things to bring up, and I may as well get out of the way, is just the visuals, and we all know that Pixar is the biggest name around in animation, and they don't disappoint. The movie looks fantastic. It looks really, really nice. Although the settings and the backgrounds started to bother me, not because they're bad, they're actually very, very good, but in particular, we spend a decent amount of the movie in the spirit realm. They have different names for it, but the space beyond normal existence. And basically, first of all, I thought we were going to spend the whole movie there. We don't. I'll talk about that in a little bit, but I was really disappointed with that. We basically get two environments in that space. We get the On the Way to the Great Beyond, which is it's a little escalator and black, and then we have the Great Before, where souls get imbued with their qualities and stuff, and that's basically just like a new age screensaver kind of background. It's very pleasant to look at, but that's it. And it doesn't change, and we just, whenever we go back there, I'm just like, oh, okay, there were so many opportunities to come up with crazy creative stuff for the background. This is a simple and straightforward approach. Again, what we got is butting up against the expectations that I have for Pixar, which are very high, just because those expectations have been set by a lot of their past work. And then we spend a lot of the movie in New York, and in general, I do not enjoy when a lot of animated movies are basically just set in the real world and that's it, because it's not creative to me. I get really bored by stories that are just, well, it's basically what you're already familiar with. Here it is. There you go. Here's more in New York. And there are even plenty of scenes where we have this cat running around New York. I don't know if I should spoil everything or not, but just on the visual side, we have this kind of goofy looking cat running around a photorealistic New York City. And all I could think of was Secret Life of Pets. Like all of a sudden it started to feel like Secret Life of Pets 3, which is a strange thing to feel when you're watching a Pixar movie. Other than that, I cannot complain about the visuals in any way. I especially really liked the designs of Jerry and Terry in the spirit realm place. They were really neat, kind of like little 2D shapes, abstract. They reminded me of some of like the Picasso one-line drawings that he would do almost as a gimmick back in the day. Yeah, in terms of the story, there is a moment where there's a Freaky Friday body switch, and the character 22 gets zapped into Joe's real body, and then Joe lands in a cat body. And as soon as that happened, and I realized that we were going to spend a huge chunk of the movie just back in real life as opposed to in this crazy, potentially inventive fictional space, I was so disappointed. I kind of wish I'd been recording my face. I was so immediately let down, because then it just started to feel like so many of my least favorite movies, and it's just one of my least favorite movie premises, where like there's something wacky or magical, supernatural happening, and like our regular characters have to hide it or everyone will think they're crazy. We've got Harry and the Hendersons, or Monsters Inc., or Ratatouille definitely falls into that category. You already know there have been tons and tons of movies with that kind of premise, or like, even Freaky Friday. I mentioned it already. That's another one. Any movie where like a person has been zapped into a dog or cat body, which there have been a million of, like, or even Brave. I was sad how much this movie reminded me of Brave, because Brave was another one where once I realized that the core of the movie was going to be girl has to shepherd mom who has been magically transformed into a bear, like that was going to be most of the movie, I was just, oh, great. Okay, it's just another one of those. It's just another one of those. So once they're doing wacky stuff back in New York and people were like, whoa, why is he acting weird? I hated it. I didn't like that part at all. It definitely serves a purpose in the story. I get why they did that, and it's about character growth both for 22 and for Joe. It contributes to an arc. I see that it's decent storytelling, but just in terms of premise and how many times I've seen similar situations, especially in kids' movies, I didn't enjoy it at all. But I guess I should move on. Yeah, here's a weird thing to say about a Pixar movie. The character work is fine. I'll say that. I don't think the characters are poorly written, and I don't think that the characters are inherently like without value or without interest. I felt trapped with these characters. And that's not a good feeling to have when you're watching a movie. And I don't think it's because of these two specific characters, Joe and 22. I don't think it's because I don't like them all that much, although 22 was kind of awful. But no, I think the real reason I kind of felt that way towards these characters is just that a lot of my favorite Pixar movies, at least, have an ensemble feel. Like they have this nice big ensemble cast. And as a result, you get breathing room. You get a good variety of characters, a variety of personality types and roles within the narrative. And I mean, the Toy Story movies are just like top notch for that because you get such a nice wide variety, even if a lot of the characters end up being kind of minimal. You know, they play a minimal role and you don't spend a ton of time with them. They don't have a million lines. You still get this big group feel to the movie. I would argue that even Inside Out has that, not just with the emotions themselves, but we get Bing Bong later on, and even the human characters are somewhat likable. And in this movie, they kind of tried to have that. We have Terry in there who's interesting, and the different Terrys almost felt like they had character, and Joe's human friends and family like play some kind of role, but they're just people. They're not like fun animated Pixar characters. They didn't have that same energy or appeal to me. So that actually kind of felt, the lack of the ensemble feel just felt restrictive to me, which was strange. Now, in terms of the messaging, it's definitely not trying to hide its message in any way. And really, that message boils down to life sure is neat, isn't it? That may sound really simplistic, but that's what it is. It's very clear about what's bad. The movie basically comes out and said, okay, what the lost souls do is bad. That's the thing to avoid. And that's what Joe has to save 22 from at the end. And what the lost souls do is they, in the words of the movie, they have something that's disconnecting them from life. It could be like an obsession about something that's not very important. It could just be an obsession about something that they really like, but it's gotten to a point where it's negatively affecting other parts of their life. It's something that disconnects you from experience and the nowness of life. In contrast, by saying that's the bad thing, the movie's saying, well, the good thing is to stay connected to life. Yes, you can have your passions and be interested in stuff and enjoy stuff, but not too much. You have to enjoy everything in a very healthy way. You have to appreciate the small things. You have to enjoy what you already have to a certain extent, because it's all magical in its own way, and there's always something to be appreciated. There's nothing wrong with that messaging. Overall, I would say it's pretty positive. I think there's a certain amount of value in that statement. However, it's also something that we've heard 1,000,001 times. I was just kind of weirdly underwhelmed by it. I was underwhelmed by the fact that this is what the movie was trying to say, something moderately profound about the human experience. Again, this is a situation where I think there's only a sense of disappointment here for me because I'm comparing this to other Pixar stuff. Like they've set their own standard, and compared to that, it feels kind of weak. If I were to compare the messaging of this movie to that of any random DreamWorks movie from back in the day, or some of the stuff that Illumination is cranking out right now, like it's head and shoulders above the rest, because at least it's bothering to say something at all, and it's trying to, in some small way, to tackle really, really big topics and questions that have defined philosophy for quite a long time. But in comparison to other Pixar stuff, it feels heavy-handed in a weird way. It feels like it's trying to say way too much in a very direct way to its audience. Maybe that's just my bitterness sourness and cynicism coming into play, I suppose. It could very well be that. But I almost wished it could have just been a fun movie that I could enjoy and watch. Like, I kind of wish it had just been escapist and fun. And maybe I should put it this way. I've talked before about the idea of whatever I called it, like kid-adult animation or something. It's not a very good name, I know. But it's the idea of, okay, you have a piece of media, a piece of animated media that works 100% on two different levels. It works 100% just a cute story with interesting characters that kids can enjoy, and it also works 100% for adults watching it who want a little bit more out of their entertainment and media. But it has to do both, and that's one of the reasons that the Pixar Golden Age movies are classics, are modern classics, is because they do both of those jobs to a T. They nail both of them at once, and you can engage with them on either level. If you just want to engage with the silly story and the fun characters, cool. If you want to engage with like the somewhat more lofty, somewhat more cerebral and meaningful messaging going on, you can do that too. If you want them both, you'll be full up. You know, you have plenty to think about, plenty to engage with, and you're probably going to have fun doing it. Soul, for me, only does the one job, and it doesn't even do it all that well. For me, Soul only really focused on the level for grown-ups. Here's the big message that we're trying to send. Here's the thing we're trying to say. And when it came to the fun little story, it's colorful and has wacky characters, and it's just funny and neat to look at. I don't feel it. I don't feel that part of the movie working for me. I'm trying really hard to say that's a personal opinion. I'm sure if a better test would be to have like a 6-year-old kid sit in front of this and just watch. And if they really laugh and they think it's all very funny when the cat's jumping up and down in the streets of New York and trying to get the guy to go to his jazz show, I don't know, that also doesn't seem like a 6-year-old would really like it that much. But yeah, for me, it only works on the one level, and that just makes it feel very normal. That makes it feel subpar for the very high standards that Pixar set for themselves a long, long time ago. And it's almost an interesting movie just for that. Like, maybe they didn't even want to appeal to young children with this one. Were they trying to appeal to teens? Maybe this was an attempt to shift that lower level to appeal more to like teenagers, because I could definitely see this storyline and this subject matter appealing to like someone on their way out of high school or someone in college who's kind of struggling to figure out what they want to do with their life. Like, I could see it speaking to them really, really directly. But that's something different for Pixar, isn't it? That's a definite shift. And lastly, just in terms of like themes and again looking at Pixar's past work, a big thing for them has been elevating the mundane, worshiping the mundane in a metaphorical sense. It's about, especially the early stuff, Toy Story in particular. Here, we're going to take something really simple that you don't even think about. It's just part of daily life. There's kids' toys. They're just a thing that exists. And you probably don't think about them that much, especially if you're not a kid anymore. And here comes this movie, several movies, that make that magical again. They make the normal thing magical. And through the eyes of the toys, we get to see our world from a new and interesting perspective, and like a fun, imaginative perspective. It's adding magic to really mundane stuff. We can see a similar thing with basically any other movie that they've ever made. Cars even tried to do that. I mean, first, the cars themselves, but also like the message they keep screaming at you through the whole thing is like, hey, pay attention to the slow, nice things about life. Like, take it slow, enjoy things a little bit more. Monsters, Inc. makes something mundane interesting in kind of a more creative way, where they put it in a fantastical situation. Oh, this fantastical monster world is actually made to seem really mundane because our POV characters are part of that world. And then what we know as mundane, this little kid who just is imaginative and fun and goofy, is fantastical in that setting. So all that is just to say, Pixar this has been a running thing with pretty much every one of their movies, this conversation about the normal, the mundane, how to make these things magical when something doesn't feel as magical. Soul is obviously doing a lot of, or trying to do something very similar, but it's trying to do that in a really on-the-nose way. And that's kind of the sticking point for me. It almost feels like the ideas aren't there, or they got tired of having fun ideas drive it all, and instead they're like, what if we just say it? What if we just say, hey everybody, pay more attention to the little things in life, because there is some kind of magic in them inherently if you really pay attention and take your time with things and appreciate every single day. In a lot of ways, we could read that message into just about every other Pixar movie. However, that that message worked better for me in all those other ones because it still had that other layer. It had the layer of, it's okay, we also have a surface level story for you to enjoy. I did not feel that at all with Soul, and that bugs me a little bit just for my viewing experience. I'm sure a ton of people will appreciate this movie for what it is. Maybe even kids will really dig it. I can't speak to that side of things. I just wanted to get my thoughts out there while they were still pretty fresh, and more importantly than that, I wanted to open up a little bit of a discussion and hear what other people felt about it. But my thoughts are just the beginning of a discussion. I would really like to hear what other people think. So feel free to share that with me. I'm sorry, I'm a little bit wiped out today. Thanks for stopping by. Have a good one.